Thank you.
Okay, now that we're being recorded, we have to skip our approval of the minutes since we have no minutes that I'm aware of. I don't know whether they were not done or they're just missing. So
they're done. It appears that I did not get them uploaded into the system, so I apologize.
So we'll defer that until next time. Move to new business. First order of business, a request for landscape screening at Preci Park with the basketball court. Matt, could you give us some background here?
Sure. I was contacted by residents adjacent to the park concerned about the new basketball court that was going in, that they were frustrated about lack of public notice or any neighborhood involvement or input on the project. I believe Eric is on the call and is attending the meeting. For those that aren't aware, the basketball court has been roughed in and is scheduled to be paved tomorrow afternoon.
All right. Eric, since you're here, why don't you speak your piece?
Hey, thanks for inviting us to the meeting. My wife is dealing with bedtime right now, so she may or may not be able to join us. But yeah, I appreciate being invited to this meeting. I just wanted to let you guys know that we use the parks a lot. I mean, we live adjacent to the park, and so we're in there every day. And we really enjoyed that green space. And I recognize that there's a conflict with the parking lot and the basketball hoop that exists there. And I realized that was in the city's plan. Hi, this is my wife, Sarah, by the way. So I guess we were just a little surprised that there wasn't anything even posted about, something that's a permanent change. And I guess I had to call the city to find out that the basketball court location was decided last March. And I had no idea about that, even just living here and being in the park every day. So I guess going forward, if there's other changes, it would be really nice if there was even something as simple as a small flyer posted someplace so people who are there all the time might be able to weigh in, because we would have voted for the other location. But I mean, that ship seems to have sailed at this point. And I guess, I mean, we're speaking for ourselves, obviously, as people who live closest to this project, but we've had a lot of other regular park users and community members come up to us just kind of confused as to what was going on as well. So I think we're not the only ones here. We're just the only ones who are in the meeting at the moment. That said, I guess, for those of us who are used to seeing, green space there, we were wondering if it would be possible to, I don't know how this works exactly, if this goes to a vote or if this is a decision that you guys make with the Parks and Recreation, but we were wondering if it would be possible to put in some sort of, evergreen screening or berm. If you go look at the site now, it's pretty torn up. So with all the construction vehicles and everything and the regrading that had to happen. So there's enough dirt there to build a berm. There's a possibility of putting in evergreen trees. There's a lot of things that could be done to help make that a little bit more palatable for the homeowners that live just adjacent to it, and hopefully to make it look a little bit more inviting for everybody involved, and all the users as well.
Right. Well, thank you. Your wife want to say anything? Is it Sarah?
I mean, I could, but I think I would echo Eric's sentiments. I appreciate a lot what the city does in general in the parks and overall to make Middleton a really nice place to live. Yeah. We did really, feel confused why there wasn't more information to be found, because we try to stay kind of informed about things. And
sure.
If there's something that could be done that seems like it could keep that space a little more green versus, just changing it over to be a basketball court and more asphalt kind of in that area versus keeping that more consolidated near the playground equipment and the shelter. That seems to us like something that would be a great idea. So we wanted to present it and talk with you about it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm glad you're concerned, and I'm glad you showed up and and spoke. I mean, there's a number of issues with that park that we've dealt with. One of them is, of course, the safety issue of having a basketball court in the middle of a parking lot. And so
Yes,
that's been a long-term pressure that with, in terms of the park, have to look and think about the safety of the park users as a first and a foremost. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a say because it's next to you, except it is, you move next to a park. And so there's the sense of some parkness is next to your house, no matter what.
we do
We actually-
understand that,
Yeah,
yes.
and we actually looked at a different location, but found that we wanted to also preserve trees. And that to get the safety, to get it out of there, but there's a strong need for the basketball court with the public and that, and to save the trees. It ended up going sort of where it was. It was not none of our first choices. That doesn't necessarily make you feel better, but we thought about it. I think the other issue is, of course, when we're dealing with the parks, things that go on inside the parks are usually not things that are put out for public hearings, because it's not a change to zoning, it's not a change to the neighborhood, it's those sort of things. So for good or bad, it's sort of done inside the committee of saying, here is the park, what do we do with what's inside this thing? And then the committee tends to make the decisions. But that's just a little bit of the background. It doesn't answer your question or solve the issue. We'll have to talk about the berm and the landscaping. We can certainly do that. I don't know who has control or power over any of those things. So maybe Matt, you want to respond a little bit too.
Absolutely. So in regards to a couple of things, we've talked about this a lot in the office, and I'm going to pull up another screen here. We did a little GIS exercise, graphic information, looking at mapping distance from basketball courts to nearest resident property line within the park system. So you can see that we have a multitude of basketball courts that are much closer to residents. I'm just going to be frank and honest. I've never had a complaint about a basketball court that wasn't, can you please fix it, improve it, do something with it, up until this point. I think, like a lot of you, I've caught a little off guard that there is this much concern or angst in regards to an improvement in the park. And it's something that I encourage PRC to think about moving forward in terms of what requires public input. And I know, this is an instance where we didn't, and we haven't for these kind of what I would call benign, small improvements to a park, but nonetheless, something to think about moving forward as we look at park improvements. John, as you referenced, we looked at a number of sites. Anything around the existing shelter, we wanted to preserve the ability to expand and redevelop the shelter site. There was a site looked at in the softball field that would have limited the agreements we have with both the high school and Middleton Baseball Softball Commission and regarding use of that field. And you aforementioned the location that the city forester said no, because of impact and potential loss of tree at that site. So with that, I'm going to go back to the agenda screen. And as I do that, some of you that have been on the commission for a long time will note that we have not screened public improvements from the public. And in all instances where screening has been asked for, requested, that has been the response has been that property owners are welcome to screen on their property, but that the city does not provide screening for improvements. And the caution here is that every trail we've ever put in, people want screened from their residence, and you'd be setting a precedent that would lead to, I think, a lot of further requests.
Could I just add something that, I mean, this is written in the agenda item is written in such a way, and as this being, voiced in such a way that we're asking for our property to be screened by Parks and Rec. And what we're asking for is for some considerate landscaping to be put in, not necessarily just to screen us, but to make that a little bit more of an enjoyable green space for everybody that uses the park, including the basketball players. Honestly, there's no shade there. There's nothing, and there are other examples in the park near the park bench by the playground. There's kind of a nice like planted area with arborvitae. There are existing junipers that are already planted in a row just in the northeast corner of the park. So, I mean, I don't really want this to sound like we are asking for a favor just for ourselves. This is just a way to make an improvement, to enhance an improvement, I guess.
Sure.
If you want to.
I think the agenda item is a little misrepresentative.
Yeah.
is
Well,
kind of
that's
what I
fine.
was
That's
trying
that's
to
why it's
say.
good you're here to
If we could
talk.
clarify that, that'd be great.
The other thing that I'll add here is a lot of you are much more familiar with Kurt Meinholz and his work than maybe others. I'd allow Kurt to let this project finish up and see what it looks like. And for reasons that will be highlighted at the end of the meeting, I'd encourage you to hold off on anything for tonight and come back and look at this after the project's completed and see if there's a need or a concern for additional landscaping.
Well, that's fine. And that's what I guess was going to say, Eric and Sarah. We appreciate your input and we will take it into consideration in terms of a general thing. Like I say, it's torn up. It's a mess. People have to get in there. And at the moment, it's to say that what you see now is what's going to be there is not necessarily the case. And we do maintain landscaping and things in all the parks. And I think as a committee, I think it behooves us to look in the future to doing more and getting more public input. And I think we'll certainly look when this project's done, based on your concerns and others, that what happens to the landscaping. But at the moment, we're sort of in the middle of limbo.
Sure.
It's flying.
And it may very well be that there's a plan for something like that, but I
Yeah.
After looking at the park's website and seeing other park improvements listed with renderings and all kinds of things, I never saw anything so much as a plan to whether there would be a retaining wall or it'd be regraded or anything would be planted around it. So it's just, I don't have any information on that. So
I believe there is a retaining wall. Is there not on that map?
it doesn't look
Kurt,
like it at this point.
Kurt has actually planned for the landscape to not need a retaining wall based on the elevation that he was able to establish. And for anyone who's been at the site, you'll see what he's done. He's elevated the lowest corner. So there's only 10 inches of drop across the entire site from a drainage standpoint. So it's actually, I keep joking that it's going to be the Kurt Meinholz Memorial Basketball Court, because he's invested a great amount of time and effort into work on it, and I'm excited to see the finished product.
All right, yeah. All right. And landscaping won't stop the basketball bounces from all night long. I'm sorry about that.
That is very true. I think,
Boing,
in the letter I originally wrote to Matt, that was the main thing that I brought up about
all right,
it,
all right.
its proximity.
Well, certainly your concerns have been heard and noted. And I think we have things to talk about in the future as this moves on and in future things. So let's, I would suggest we table this at the moment to see what happens when the plan is all done. And then we'll certainly revisit and take a look if the committee's okay with that.
Yep, thanks for including us.
Yeah, thanks for your
All right.
time. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We will come back to this, Matt, at some point. All right, thank you. Let's move on to item number 2, award of stump grinding. We're getting real important now.
This is a smaller number of stumps than we normally see. I guess that's means we're post Emerald Ash Borer at this point, because in the past these awards have been pretty large. This is $77,950.
Yeah.
Holy Tree and Landscape. We reached out to 3 and got 2 quotes, and we're recommending award to Bully.
Don't you think for 20,000 we'll get a better job?
I'm not sure about that. I think that is the state of where we're at, is somebody threw a number at it and said, maybe no one else will put in on it and we'll make it worth our while.
Well, is part of this lower cost because we have fewer ash trees around now?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be shocked if any of these were ash trees. I think we're past that. So these are just trees that have come down due to storm damage, and to point out, when a tree comes down due to storm damage, we don't go out and take down every stump. It would be a waste of city resources from our perspective. We wait until there's a list. We bring in a contractor that knocks them out in a day or two, and it stops us from having to stop doing what we're doing and take equipment and manpower around to take care of these stumps.
All right,
So,
and you've worked with Boley. I've seen them around a lot.
correct. They've done a lot of work for the city.
So you're comfortable with this? With
Yes.
them?
I've actually worked with Foley too in my yard, a lot of stumps that we had, and they were really good.
Well, hello, Eric. I didn't see you. All right, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we award the bid to Boley for stump grinding for the cost of $7,950.
Thank you, David. We need a second.
I will second it.
All right, Joan, thank you. We have a second. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Move on to item number 3, the 2023 operating budget. I presume, Matt, is this for approval or is this for information?
I'm always confused by that question, John, because as I think you're aware and others are aware that the city has started the budget review process.
Yeah.
I like to always tell the finance committee that, the Parks Rec Forestry Committee has seen our budget and there weren't concerns or issues. So that's kind of why it's in front of you. But I also know that at least the document that you're seeing tonight, the finance committee and council already have. And we go in front of them on the 29th of this.
I will take this as informational then.
And I obviously, if there are concerns or what I try and use this as is an opportunity to answer questions that especially new members have that maybe seen this for the first time. The sheet that we tend to pay a lot of attention to is this decision item. The reality, and I think most on the committee understand the operating budget is the bane of all city staff. There are a lot of things that we'd like to ask for and maybe do differently. But unfortunately, because of levy limits imposed by the state legislature, we're very limited. We're allowed to increase the operating budget each year by the net percentage of new growth in the community, which usually ranges between 1.8 to 3%. And when we're looking at 9% inflation, and that's on, we have items that, obviously fuel has increased significantly. We've seen a lot of increases in material costs. We've seen a lot of increase in things like janitorial, porta-john rentals. I can't think of a single thing that we do that has decreased in cost in the last 2 years. And so unfortunately, in a lot of these situations, we've put in an inflation factor on some of these material and supply equipment lines. I don't think we're going to get the additional money. And what it means is we're going to be able to do less than we did last year or the year before as prices continue to increase. And I don't have a magic answer to that issue. But we go through this process with the operating budget every year, and there isn't a whole lot that changes from one year to the next. For good, bad, or in between, I guess.
Yeah. Well, at the university, they used to take pride in saying we do more with less. But I think that's just the reality. That's not a pride issue. That's it.
And we haven't talked a lot about the referendum. There is a referendum question on November 8th. The city is asking the voters to increase the levy. I think the amount is somewhere around $770,000. None of that is going to impact these issues in terms of these line items that we could use a little more money in, but it is looking at some increased staffing resources, including a park staff person. All we can do is present facts. And so we've been putting together a lot of information, a lot of facts. The parks crew has been at 6 full-time members since as best we can tell, 1995. And park acreage has went up a little bit in that time. It's nearly doubled. And so I think the city has hired a public relations firm to assist with the referendum messaging. And I think this is all data that will be getting pushed out as the referendum gets closer and approaches. And I'm happy to talk to any of you about that. City staff are very limited in what we can say or advocate for. However, all of you, to the best of my knowledge, have no limitations on what you can say and advocate for in your public interactions. And I know the school district is out to referendum. I know that no one wants to pay more money in taxes. One of the things that it's crazy to me, because I think you've all heard and I hear frequently, well, Madison does this. Well, our mill rate per 1,000 of assessed is like $5.64. And the last I saw Madison's is 12 something.
Yeah.
And Sun Prairie is right there as well. And so I think we provide a great level of service, considering we collect, less than half per 1,000 of assessed value from the city of Madison. And then everybody rants about assessments. I can tell you, everyone I know in Madison, their assessments have went up substantially as well. So it'll be interesting to see as the referendum approaches and the votes are tallied, where that all lays. But I see the need, and I think there's a lot of facts.
But it might be helpful, Matt. I mean, you say the referendum doesn't affect these numbers, but it does if you add a staff person, which is what. So maybe you could talk about in your most likely ideal world, if you were to get another staff person, which is what I hear is what you're looking for, what would you do? How would that resource work for us?
So the best way I can explain it is, when we had 100 acres of park and 6 full-time maintenance staff, how often do you think the park crew were in those parks, the appreciation they were able to take care of those parks and the time they spent in them? And now with 6 full-time staff and 300 acres of parkland, not talking conservancy at all, and looking at adding the Bell Farm project, adding additional acreage that we're talking about adjacent to Bell Farm, adding the Bruce Company project, the acre farm that's adding up to 10, looks about like 10 acres of park and 2 parks. We have the future Bishop's Bay Park, the 50-acre park coming online. There's a breaking point there that you can't do more with less.
No, I understand. But so that your vision is essentially just basic core working staff.
Yeah, and the hope is that we're able to do more in conservancy. I know that's Mark Wagner's hope. I know it's the Conservancy Land's hope, but the reality is that we have 1 staff member and the 4 prisoners that come from Oak Hill prison that is our core labor force in the conservancy areas. And by adding that additional staff member, the hope is that there's more opportunity to do some projects and some larger things in-house within conservancy lands by sharing resources and 1 week or 2 days of a week, the whole crew is able to work on a conservancy project, instead of the fact that we really can't pull off and think about the amount of rain we've had over the past month. The crew is mowing like it's May, and we've lost our seasonal help. And so one of the reasons Kurt has been the sole guy working on the basketball court at Preci is everybody else is on a mower trying to keep up with the way the grass has been growing like crazy.
I think, with like Bell Farms, let's just fill it with sand and call it a giant sandbox, and then you won't have to worry about the lawn.
I
There's
encourage you,
solutions, they're out there.
I would hope in that situation that PRFC would come and answer phones in the office for a week.
Okay, well, that's I know Nick's ready to do that. He's all set. All right, well, thank you for that anyways. Any
Yeah.
other comments or issues with the budget?
And again, I'm happy to answer questions now, or if you want to take a look at this and follow up, if there's something that you're questioning what that is, or what we do in that area. But a lot of, as you can see, I think pretty much every one of these decision items is related to either adding the parks crew member or inflation and increased cost of doing business.
Well, I can't speak for the whole committee, but I've worked with you long enough, and I know that you're very straightforward and you're very good and thoughtful about this, and you put your whole self into it. So I stand with a great deal of admiration and trust in what you do here. So other comments from the committee?
I have a comment that's really
Sure, David.
aside to all this, but if you do end up speaking to the public about the budget and the referendum and taxes, one thing that I've seen over and over again is people get confused that their assessment has gone up by so much and they think that their taxes are automatically going to go up by the same percentage, which simply is not true. If the levy stays the same and everybody's tax assessment goes up by 10% with no other changes, which of course never happens, then that just means the mill rate's going to go down. And you'll end up with the same amount of taxes you had before with the smaller assessment. The city's not allowed to have a big change in the levy, as Matt was saying. So it's just a matter of how the pie is divvied up, not the size of the pie. And that's something that I think right now is going to add to the confusion about this referendum. That they're going to think that they're going to have to pay for more assessment and pay for the referendum. It's just not that bad.
And deal with inflation.
And deal with inflation. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not trying to
No, I know,
dismiss
I know.
anything. But
I think in some ways, talking points, to quote Matt, I love what you said about 10 minutes ago. You said, oh, it went up a little bit. It about doubled.
Yeah.
And, doubled, I think that the fact is, whether you agree with the numbers of the taxes or anything else, the real stress factor is you've doubled the size of the park with no more staff. And I think that's a simple elevator message that I think people can understand, whether they vote the referendum or not. I think that to me is a message I need to convey to everybody I talk to.
The other thing, and I believe we shared this a couple meetings ago, but based on the 2022 operating budget, the city operated the park system for $185 in taxes on a $400,000 home.
Wow.
So I mean, that's another talking point that I think people don't realize. People pay their taxes and unfortunately for the city, write their check to the city of Middleton. And then a big chunk of it, a very large chunk of it goes to the Middleton Cross Plains School District. And then another good sizable chunk of that goes to the technical college. So, and that's true of everywhere. The city is usually a very small sliver, but unfortunately the check is written to the city of Middleton.
Well, unless you write it in two checks, the second one goes to the county.
You're correct.
Having written many of those. All right, other discussions, comments, questions? All right, Matt, thank you very much for this, for your work and all. You're a very appreciated member of the city staff, especially from my perspective. Whether they tell you that or not, I don't know, but I'll tell you that. All right, so the last item on the agenda is a project update from Matt.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier, the Preci basketball court is being paved tomorrow afternoon. There's some cure time before it can be painted, but we will get that done this fall as well. Work is scheduled to start this week on the pickleball court resurfacing at Taylor Park. You'll remember we approved earlier this year a contract for courts 1 and 8 to be resurfaced. And then CXC work. CXC has, I believe, if not today, tomorrow, signed their contract with their contractor, who's Integrity Grading and Excavating, to do the stormwater and site grading. And the city is finalizing its contract with S&L Underground to install the parking lot. And so the phase 2 work at the cross-country ski facility is scheduled to start on or around October 1st. So those are the big projects for this fall. In terms of staffing, I know everyone's aware that Rebecca Price has left the department. She still stops in and says hi on some Fridays, and was in this past Friday when she's not teaching. But for the most part, she's done with her work with the city. We interviewed 5 finalists last Thursday. And I'm believe by the end of this week, we'll have a really exciting announcement out about Rebecca's replacement. And I think that process has went extremely well. And then this is tough to say, but I have submitted my resignation to the city, and it is 1,100% related to family. And family issues, and trying to get my crazy band of people going in multiple directions all together in one place. So I have accepted the same position with the city of Beloit, and my last day in Middleton is October 21st. So
I take back everything I said nice about it.
I was thinking the whole time you're saying this, John, this is gonna come back on me.
That's okay. I'm
No,
really
he's gonna
sorry to
feel
hear that
guilty
news.
for leaving.
I have agonized over this decision for 6 months. I told them no back in March, and it's bittersweet to be leaving Middleton. It has been absolutely, as you are all aware, a fabulous community to work in. I've got lots of advice. I'm going to save that. My hope is, and as everyone's aware, we go budget heavy right now, and most of the projects are kind of lined up. So I don't envision the first Monday in October meeting, but it is my hope that we would meet the 3rd Monday in October, maybe even in person, if I can get that permitted, and be kind of an opportunity to talk about, I don't know, picking my brain one last time on what I think are priorities, or any advice you want to take, and hopefully introducing to you our new Assistant Director for Recreation.
So Matt, what is your last day?
October 21st.
All right.
So I gave about 5 weeks because I felt that was important, and I'm not going to disappear. I envision that Mark Wagner will be communicating with me for well into the future. So and Middleton's going to hold a special place. But I think a lot of you are aware that since my wife took another position and we haven't had the kids in Middleton's programs and running around Middleton's parks, it's been tough on me, because that's a favorite part of my job, is seeing the kids participate in the programs and being at the special events. And I might be at work, but the family's with, and that hasn't been the case for a while now, and excited for that to hopefully be a reality in Beloit as we hope to build a house on the land my wife grew up on. So
nice.
And
but now we can finally shut down a splash pad too and save some money.
the splash pad shut down. Labor Day hits, and that turned that off. So
anyways, I speak for myself and the committee. Thank you, Matt, for all your years. It's been a great pleasure working with you, and we will miss you dearly. The city will miss you. Everybody. I meant what I said before about somebody who has been great and easy to work with, and somebody who you can really trust and believe what he's telling you. So I know the Beloit people will get that from you as well. I will pick your brain. I'm leaving in a week for 3 weeks to Portugal and Spain, but when I come back,
Yeah.
lunch date would be very
Absolutely.
helpful for me.
Absolutely.
Great. I will also, Nick, if you do have a meeting the first week, I'll be gone. So Nick, if that comes up, you could share. But we'll plan on a meeting.
Yeah.
On
Yeah,
the
I
16th
mean,
or whatever, 15th.
I would hold the date right now to meet. If something
Yeah.
comes up, we'll definitely meet, but it's also always been a time of year where there isn't a lot on meetings, and I think it'd be better used that middle of October, if we can do something in person.
All right.
Fingers crossed.
Well, thank you. I never knew project update meant this update, but all the best to you, and understand with your family and all, that's important. You're doing what you
Yes.
gotta do, so. Any other
Congratulations.
comments, questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, second,
I'll second.
all right, all those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll see you in a couple weeks or a month, so take care.
Okay, good
Thank
night.
you.